Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm doing a giveaway of Classroom of the Elite Year 1, the entire collection. I am giving away from books 1 all the way to book 11 and a half. If you guys want to have a chance to win the entire series, then click the video link in the description. It goes over all the rules. It's 100% free, but time is limited. It's from July 1st all the way to August 1st. That's when I'll pick the winner. And yeah, so you guys want a chance to do it, click the link in the description. Well, at least either do that after you watch this video, or if you're going to click on it, come back and watch this video. But without the wait, let's get into it. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Potential Unleashed. We are back with another video. We are reviewing Classroom of the Elite volume 11 and a half, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I typically enjoy the half books. You guys don't know what those are. It's typically stuff that happens during the break. 4.5 was summer break, or yeah, 7.5 was winter break, and 11.5 is spring break. A lot of stuff happened in this video, or well, this light novel, so let's get into it. Chapter 1. We don't have soliloquies when it comes to half books, but we do get a little bit of internal thoughts from characters, and this one was about Harikta. Harikta Suzune, she is depressed because Manabu is graduating and he's leaving on this day. So she's deciding should she go see him or not. We know that her relationship at the start, it wasn't the best, but it's gradually been getting better, and she's still debating if he wants her there or not. So she's scared to see him off, where she's making the decision, and this is very important because he's going to be gone or won't be able to see her for 2 years. But in order to do so, she strengthens her resolve. She's like, all right, I'm off, and she's going to go visit him. Chapter 2. This is during the graduation ceremony. Kiyotaka, he is interested because he'd never been to a graduation ceremony before. He wants to know how the third years did, because we know Nagamo put stuff into play where Harikta Manabu, it was undecided or up in the air if he would be able to graduate from class A or not. So that's pretty interesting. And we also figure out the total class points of the first years. We know that because they lost in the previous book, that they're going to get bumped down back to class D, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you look at the points, class A, they got 1,131, class B is at 550, class C is at, well, now going back to class D, which is Yakoji's class, they're at 347, and class D, now going back to class C, is at 508. And the reason why I say even though they're going down, it's not a total loss, is because we find out that in terms, since they started at 0, in terms of overall gain, class D now has the highest amount of gain in the class, especially with different leaders starting to emerge, different people starting to come into their own, different roles being displayed, and people are only going to get better as the year goes on. This is promising for the class. As he's going to school, Yukimura, he says that nobody in the class, well, almost all of them, don't really blame him, and Kiyotaka's like, well, okay, well, that means some people do blame me, which is true. They're saying that if they had a more capable leader, then they may have won. But to put this, like, they're going against class A, right? It was expected for them to be the underdogs and to lose, and they lost by a last second, like, chess match. And even if, like, Koenji didn't participate like he should have, and then Kiyotaka lost because of interference, so I don't think that's fair, but it is what it is. But it's absurd that these people, you know, are clowning on him and stuff, because nobody else was willing to take that risk to be expelled. I mean, look at Ruin, he did last second, but that he was really the true leader of that class, and he really don't give a fluff, right? He's all about the thrills, all about the joy ride, so it is what it is. And so Kesa, he asks, why didn't he rat himself, well, why didn't he rat him out to Harikta? And Kiyotaka's like, well, I really didn't care, but well, in his head, but to be honest, the reason why he didn't, he said it slipped his mind, he forgot, and he was focused on his commander duties. Where Yukimura, you know, he talks about how Harikta has grown as a leader, and he says, well, it's not that I'm going to, you know, blindly follow her. Like, I'll listen to what she says, but if I disagree with something that she says, then I'm going to put my foot down, and I'm going to explain to her, well, I disagree with this because this and that, which is respectable, right? I think in terms of a leader doesn't know everything, and they're supposed to take opinions from others. And so Yukimura, what he's saying, it makes a lot of sense. During the graduation ceremony, it's asked that a representative of class A of the third years come up, and everybody's like, oh, well, who's it gonna be? And this happened to be Manabu. So he did indeed graduate from class A. He gave a speech where it was tugging at the hearts of people. People got emotional, etc. And then back in the classroom, Chabishira, she praises the growth of Class D, and she said that they're better than previous Class D students, but they still have a long way to go in order to achieve going to Class A. And Yana Yakoji, after Chabishira, dismisses them, he says he's going to go see Mount Blue off, and he's like, Harikta, you want to go see him off? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, okay, well, I'm gonna go. And he says, but you really should go see him, since this is the last time that you'll be able to see each other. But instead of going there, he has a pit stop he has to make first. He's going to do something. He's in his little scheming Yakoji mode. And this is where we get a flashback where he contacted the chairman, Sage Yanaki. He got the number from his daughter, Arisu. And the reason why he's contacting him is because he's talking to him about Tsukishiro and how he interfered with the exams, and he's trying to expel him. And so basically, in short, the conversation is with, and this was kind of dope, and Yana Yakoji had some balls to say this. He was like, all right, it's fine with Tsukishiro what he's doing, I'm gonna protect myself, but if he uses methods that, intends to break the rules, well, I'm not gonna hesitate to break rules to not get expelled. I was like, oh shoot, Kiyotaka's about business, which I understand. If he's using underhanded tactics, why shouldn't I fight fire with fire, right? I respect that, right? But it takes a lot of balls to tell that to the director straight up. But Kiyotaka was asked the question, well, how are you going to do this? And he really had some ideas, but he didn't know. He said he wanted some help from the teachers, where Sage Naki, he says, hey, get Chabishira because she's your homeroom teacher, and then also get Mashima because he has a loyalty towards protecting his students, as we saw in the previous book, how he tried not to let students get expelled for no reason. Makes sense, right? Mashima, I'm a little surprised because Class A, Class A, they're the highest ranking, so you wouldn't want to help somebody from Class C, but I guess, or now Class D, but I guess, his loyalty to the students is something that is well respected. But Chairman Sagenaki asked Kiyotaka, well, what's he going to do after he graduates, right? He's curious. Where Kiyotaka confirms that, well, he only came to the school and to have a little bit of freedom before he's forced to go back, because after he escapes this school, his father's just going to end up trapping him and making him be a mentor in the White Room. So he believes that his life is already sealed, his fate's already sealed, which I disagree. More likely than not, he probably will find a way, or his father might get a change of heart later down the line, but we don't know. There's a lot more books left to come out, so we'll see. Back in the present, we go to the reception room. Chabishiro is already there, and he doesn't like her because how she tried to manipulate him into achieving and aiming for Class A, and he exposed her on that, so he's kind of mad at her for that. And one thing I will say, this book had a lot of moments where I was like, oh shoot, because Chabishiro, she was like, for you to be talking to me like this, your abilities didn't meet my expectations. So for you to leave loose to Sage and Naki, she said, you're good, but you're not as good as you think you are. And I was like, oh shoot. And then, he's like, okay, well, you are free to believe that, but you'll see what my abilities, or what happened, when this meeting happened. And she's like, okay. So Mashima, he enters, Sagenaki's there as well, and they start explaining stuff, and so they're talking, and a lot of stuff happened. I do want to mention though, and he mentioned this multiple times throughout the book, he told Chabishiro that he's actually going to try to aim for Class A, but I take a lot of what he says with a grain of salt. But like I said, he also mentions multiple times throughout the book, but I'm not really sure if he's actually going to try, but it is what it is. We'll see as the future books happen. But as they enter the room, Sagenaki explains that Tsukishiro interfered with the exam, and that, she would have lost if, the school didn't interfere. With Chabishiro, she started being quiet. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh, you're talking all that cash money crap. But now that it exposed the truth, now you're not saying nothing. Now you feel bad, right? And so Mashima, he's confused. He's like, okay, well, why would somebody interfere? Because, Chabishiro and Mashima, they weren't in the classroom, right? It was Hoshinomiya and the Class D or Class C, Ruin, his homeroom teacher. They were the ones proctoring, so they couldn't see what Kiyotaka was actually doing. And so Sagenaki, he's like, okay, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Obviously, the person above, trying to get him expelled has a lot of influence was in the outside world. And number two, the reason why they're aiming for Enyana Yakoji is because he is an extraordinary student, right? He's like, put 2 and 2 together, right? Sagenaki's funny, and I don't know why it took Mashima so like hard to realize that, but she ended up saying, all right, you know, they ended up agreeing that they would try to protect him the best that they could to make sure that Tsukishiro would not interfere, like outside interference, and it would be a fair exam that Kiyotaka can take in the future. After the meeting, Kiyotaka, he meets up with Suzune and they go see Manabu, and Nagumo, he talks with Manabu, basically, you know, talking about respects, giving his final words, and he's like, man, I wish we would have been able to actually compete against each other, because they weren't really real ways to interact with each other since they were different age levels and they weren't in the same grade. And Nagumo, he said he'll change the school, and Manabu, he's like, well, I wish I could experience what you're going to change, right? See what you have in store. And they shook hands. It was a very, like, you know, respectable, the senpai to his junior, right? Passing of the torch, very touching. And Nagumo, he notices Suzune, he walks over to her, talks to her about her brother and how he's so amazing and that she's honored, or should be honored, that she is related to him. And he says he'll make the school into a mediocrity, basically saying that holding power is based off of individual ability. So if you're very smart and capable, you're obviously going to succeed in his ideal world that the school should be in. And I'm gonna be honest, I'll probably talk about this later because they did bring it back up, but I don't disagree with Nagumo saying. I think he should fine-tune it a little bit, but for the most part, I agree with what he's saying. But Kiyotaka, you know, as Nagumo leaves, he finds Manabu and he talks to him because he believes this is going to be his last opportunity to do so. Where Manabu, he's like, well, I'm leaving on the 31st. I'm leaving at 12:30. I would like for you and Harikta Suzune to be there. He's like, hey, I'll be there, but I don't know if Harikta will be there. And, you know, after that happens, Kiyotaka tries to go back. He's walking back to the dorms where he bumps into Harada, and Harata's like, well, you know, Kiyotaka, you know, I need some relationship advice. Kiyotaka, he's like, you want relationship advice from me? He said, is this about Michan? And it is. He's basically saying that he doesn't have feelings for her like that, and he doesn't know, because Hirata, he does not like hurting people's feelings, but, you know, Kiyotaka basically says, you know, the longer you drag this out and tell her that you don't like her, the more it's going to hurt. And Hirata, he's like, all right, I'll try my best in order to, you know, put her down lightly. But then he asks Kiyotaka, he's like, yo, can you call me by my first name? And Kiyotaka, he's like, because he started blushing, and Kiyotaka's like, this is a little weird, because usually, like, that's whenever, like, guys are into girls, or, you know, they usually call them by their first name because it shows how close they are. I mean, guys do it too, but he, you know, he does it with Kissa and other members of the Enyana Yakoji group, but he's just like, just came out of nowhere. But Hirata, he said ever since, like, he had that incident in middle school or junior high, that he hasn't had a relationship or a friendship with somebody that he could call him by his first name. So, you know, that just shows how much he trusts Enyana Yakoji. Chapter 3, this happens with a lot of Hiyori involved. He meets Hiyori at a cafe, they're on a date, and then as they're talking, Ike and Shinohara sit next to them, right? They don't know that that's Hiyori and Kiyotaka, but as they're talking, Ike and Shinohara, they're going to do more to get better, because they see the progress of their class, and they're starting to believe, one, that they're getting left in the dust, and two, that it's not entirely impossible to reach class A. So they said they're gonna try and do harder. And as Ike's about to confess to Shinohara that he likes her, they notice Kiyotaka next to them. They get flustered. They're like, whoa, what's going on? Why are you here? And Kiyotaka in his head, I find this funny, they're like, why are you here? Kiyotaka's like, well, I was here first. Y'all sat next to me. So, like, that was a funny interaction. Even though, it wasn't verbal, just seeing that moment was pretty cool. Shinohara, she's like, well, are y'all on a date? And Hiyori, she's like, flushed. She's like, no. We're just friends, right? You know, whenever, like, a guy and a girl, especially in this series, like, are seen together, there's always assumption that they're going out, which is not necessarily the case all the time. But then, you know, when that happens, you know, they start arguing and then they leave. And, you know, Hiyori's like, well, are they going to be all right? Kiyotaka's like, man, they'll be fine, right? It happens all the time. But anyway, continue with your conversation. And so Hiyori, she asked if Kiyotaka was the reason why Ruin changed. And Ruin, he changed after hunting somebody down in class D. And so the reason why Ruin changed is because losing to someone superior to him was why he changed, because he wants to have that rematch with Kiyotaka, which I'm not going to hold you. the more and more I see Ruin, the more and more he's starting to become one of my favorite characters. He's definitely top 5. I don't think he'll ever make it into the top 3, but I think if I had to make a top 5, he's probably like number 4. But I love that like interaction with him and Ruin, and just Ruin as a character wanting to get revenge, wanting to be the best, and he'll do anything, even underhanded means, to be the best. So seeing him come back in action, especially in the last book, I really loved, and he's going to be doing stuff from now on. And so Kiyotaka, he doesn't confirm or deny like that he did this, but he did tell Hiyori to leave a message for him saying, yo, you know, you got 5 wins. He's like, that's cute, it's cute you got 5 wins, but if it was me, I would have gotten more. I would have gotten 6 or maybe even 7. I'm like, oh, okay, Kiyotaka's talking his ish right now. And then he called Karuzawa like a while ago, told her to come, and she sees them two like on a date, and so she gets mad and she gets jealous and she walks away, like storms off. And Kiyotaka, he smiles at this because he schemed, he did this on purpose. Chapter 4, Kiyotaka, he receives a message from Ichinose, and that she wants to talk to Harikta and himself. So on the way to the cafe, he meets Ibuki and Ishizaki, and Ishizaki, he asks Kiyotaka, yo, transfer to class C. He's like, with you and Ruin, they'd be unstoppable. Now granted, because they are so similar, I agree with Ishizaki, they would be unstoppable. But Kiyotaka, he's like, well, I'm not gonna do it because I'd much rather go against you guys as enemies. I'm like, okay, right? Seeing whenever Ruin like takes another leap, right? Because Ruin is good, right? But he needs like a little oomph to make him a little bit better or more challenging opponent for Kiyotaka. So I can't wait for that to happen. And after that, they end up leaving. We get more Ruin stuff a little bit later in this chapter, but he meets with Ichinose and they talk about the exam. And you know, this is funny because, you know, Ichinose, she's saying, oh, we went against class D, and then it got brought up that they, like, Kiyotaka, he wanted to challenge class A, and then Harikta's sitting up in here, right, she's grown, because she didn't say it out loud, but she looked, she was like, you wanted to challenge class A. She kept it to herself, but because the discussion they had was to go against class D, but Harikta was like, again, she's like, all right, you know, I'll save this for later. And as they're talking, the reason why they're having this discussion is because since they're so close together in class points, that they decided that it'd be best if they you know, sever ties and, you know, with the alliance and become enemies and challenge each other. And, you know, they all agreed. And as they're getting ready to leave, you know, walking down the stairs, Harikta's like, don't turn around, but answer my question. And I was like, oh, because Harikta, she started talking her ish. And originally, Harikta was a character, and I will do a character analysis on her. She was a character who believed in herself, but at the same time came to Kiyotaka for a lot of advice. And now she doesn't do that as much, which I love. She's becoming more independent and less dependent on him. But she basically is like, and you know, the reason why she told him not to turn around is because in a psychological game, she knows that she cannot beat him, because if you look at somebody's face and, you know, she might get flustered and his face won't change. But she asks him, well, why did you go against class A? And he's like, well, I thought going against class, you know, A was the best option, because if you look at it in hindsight, right, you can say whatever you want, but looking at something in the moment and in hindsight is two different things, because we know the outcome and how class D won. But if they would have challenged Kiyotaka's class, they would have challenged class D. They may have had a different approach. So it is what it is. And so, man, like what happened next, I was sitting up in here on the edge of my seat, because Harikta, she doesn't ask of him, she demands him. She's like, you're gonna stop you know, sitting on the sidelines, you're gonna get involved, you're gonna show us what you can do. And he declines, and Harikta's like, what are you declining for? She said, you're good, right? I've seen what you did on the island test and different things that you've done, but I think that you're not as good as you think you are. And she's like, your ego is too big. She said, I think I would be better than you physically and when it comes to written tests. And Kiyotaka's like, oh, so you really think so? She's like, yeah, so let me test your ability. She's like, next written exam, right, whoever gets the highest score wins. And Kiyotaka's like, hold on, I'll do this, but it doesn't make logical sense. If I were to get 100 on everything, people are going to know that, you know, I've been holding back. He said, how about this? We'll do it based off of one exam, your choice, because Kiyotaka's smarter than her, obviously. And he's like, I can lie and say that I studied for this. And so Harikta was like, that's fine, but if we win, you're going all out. You're going to help us reach class A without holding back. He's like, cool, but if I win, you got to do something of my choice. And he hadn't decided yet, but I will say, right, they were both talking yin yang back and forth. I was like, holy crap, like I cannot wait to see this battle in the next book. And then at the same mall, right, Hashimoto, he's having a conversation with Ruin, right, asking him why he competed again. And Ruin's like, oh, this was just a one-time thing. We know that's a lie. He secretly wants his rematch with Kiyotaka. And Hashimoto, he tries to like bait him. Hashimoto is all about this, right? I'm not saying he's dumb, but he works best when he talks. He tried to bait him. He's like, yo, you know, brings up Enya and Yokoji's name a lot. And Ruin doesn't work because Ruin is better than Hashimoto. Ruin's probably one of the best characters in the series when it comes to manipulation and just overall intelligence. And then as they're talking, Kenzaki comes in the bathroom and he threatens Ruin. He's like, yo, he's like, Ichinose, she's a good leader, right? She's very capable, but her weakness is that she's kind-hearted. He said, I'm not her. So he said, if you do some BS like you did again, he said, I will come for you personally. And Ruin's like, word, you're coming for me personally? He's like, I love to see that challenge. And as they leave, Kiyotaka and Ruin end up finding somehow to meet, where Ruin, Kiyotaka, he gives him advice. He's like, all right, look, I want to challenge you again, but you got to get better. You're not on my level yet. The things that you do, they work, but at the same time, they do have some consequences, because if you get caught, you can get expelled. And Ruin, he, sucks his teeth and he tries to attack Kiyotaka. Kiyotaka, he weaves, dodge, and, all of that. And where Ruin calls him a monster. And he talks about Hiyori's message and all of that, where Ruin, he ends up, listening to Kiyotaka's advice for once because he wants to be able to surpass him. And also, he mentions that with Saki and Naki, he's like, there's no way, Ruin is very intelligent. He said there's no way that you lost without outside influence, because if you lost to Saki and Naki, there's no way that you're, like, he believes Kiyotaka's superior to her, and he said, well, you beat me, and he thinks he's superior than Saki and Naki. He thinks they both are. So he said, the fact that you beat me means something fishy happened where the results of your exam was messed up, which is true. As Kiyotaka's leaving, he sees Ichinose out in the rain. She doesn't have an umbrella, and he joins her. She questions why. He says, because I want to. And as they're headed back to the dorm, they're talking, and she's gonna say she's gonna go to her room, but Kiyotaka knows he goes to her room, she's gonna break down and cry, so he invites her to go to his dorm. And they talk about the different leaders. They talk about Saki and Naki and what she's done with Class A, Rita's girl Ruin, and how he completely crushed her. And Ichinose basically is like, well, Class B, they're maintaining, but looking at the course that they're going, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to lose. And Ichinose is questioning. She's like, well, with everybody growing, right, me as a leader, I'm not doing enough, and I'm not good enough for us to win. And so she asks Kiyotaka, what are your thoughts about, like, my class and everything that's going on? She wants to know everything. And so basically he says that, everybody's going to experience highs, everybody's going to experience lows, but they have to push through. And Ichinose, she's still frustrated, right? And then Kiyotaka, he says, well, here's the thing, right? Even though that we're enemies, I'll always be there for you. And so Ichinose, because she likes him, she's like, well, I don't want to, use the title as enemies. And like I said, she's frustrated, where this was pretty deep, right? And before I say what's going to happen, I want to clarify, right, for my ladies out there, right, I've personally never done this, but I know this happens. Whenever women or girls, they're at their lowest, because of like different emotions and stuff like that, that is when you can take advantage of them. And a prime example of this, think about, like, if you've ever been in a relationship and you called your guy best friend because you're talking about your boyfriend, and then the guy best friend, he's either going to tell you a couple things. He's going to be like, that guy's no good, you should break up with him, or he's going to be like, oh, you should come over, or you want me to come over, because he's trying to slide in, right? That's how that works. He takes advantage of weakness, and that's what Kiyotaka did right here. I was mistaken, right? I don't know if he knows, and I'm going to do a love interest video, and I'll probably do a video talking about this in depth, but I don't know if he knows that Ichinose is into him or not, but he knows that he's constantly saved her over and over and over again, so she's constantly opened up to him, relied on him. But what he did, he was flirting with her, right? He played with her emotions, so he went up to her, he started messing with her hair, he put his hand on her cheek, and you know, I'm gonna look stupid when I do this, right? But he did a little lip thing where he like moved his hand down to the cheek and like, you know, like slowly like put his hand on her lip, right? Think about like if you're watching a movie with somebody, like y'all are sitting across from each other, think like staring in each other's eyes and stuff like that. And like I said, he was messing around with her, and then, you know, she was hesitant at first, she was trembling, but then she was going with it and she was liking it, right? And then he gets up and he's like, yo, let's meet like this again, one-on-one, so we continue where we left off a year from now, right? And so she agrees and calls him a mysterious person. And this is where it breaks my heart a little bit, because Ichinose is my second favorite character, and Yana Yakoji's my favorite. And like I said, I will go in depth about this in future videos, so make sure you guys subscribe for that. But basically he says, because he has her in the palm of her hand, it's kind of like Karuzawa, how she latched onto him as a leech, but you know, there's different things that's happened to where, which we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, and how their relationship has changed. Ichinose has kind of latched on to Kiyotaka, relying on him a lot, where it's made her more vulnerable and more trusting and opening up to him, so he knows a lot about her and she doesn't know about him. So he says if Class B were to fall, he would personally be the one who crushes Ichinose. So basically he's playing with her emotions right now, and if they were to fall, that in the end he's going to permanently probably hurt her feelings, romantically, and make her like to the point where she can't bounce back, because it'll be at the end of their second year. So if they're all the way at the bottom and her being the leader can't bounce back, that means Class B will definitely be out of the running in order to achieve Class A. Even though chapter 4 was probably my favorite part for like everything that happened, chapter 7 was good, but chapter 5 was pretty interesting. This made me realize how much I love Manabu as a character, because Kiyotaka, he's at the gate with Manabu, they're talking. He talks about how Nagumo, his new idea for the school, I forget the term, but basically he wants individuals to be able to showcase their strength and the others go down. And I mentioned this earlier, I think Nagumo's right. Like in life, like the better you are, like you always need, you know, other people around you, but at the same time, how I look at it is like this. I think Nagumo's right with an asterisk. I do think that individuals should be able to showcase their abilities, but at the same time, you do need a cast around you, because you can't do everything yourself. However, sometimes those people who are behind you, right, you have that backpack and you can only carry them so far. So I do think that Nagumo's right with an asterisk. And Kiyotaka, he says, well, I don't necessarily disagree with what Nagumo's saying, but in case he does something that personally affects me, I'll just wait and see how his ideal school, or how he's going to make the new school, which makes sense. And then Manabu, he flips his phone, he shows him 2 numbers, he shows him Tachibanas, and he shows him his own numbers, and memorize this and call us anytime after graduation, because they do have a good relationship. And Manabu, he claims that he has a special gift, because Kiyotaka, he asks, well, what do you like? Why do you see so much in me, right? Manabu, he says he has a special gift that he can see the talent in people, and he sees a lot in Kiyotaka, where Kiyotaka, he's like, well, how do you view me? Basically, he says that he sees him as a monster, somebody with basically perfect abilities that you just were gifted with them, and that Manabu said he would be the last person he would want to challenge. And this is where it really hit me, because this is where just because you're the smartest person in the room does not mean you're always right. And Kiyotaka knows this, because different times Harita will ask him for questions and Kiyotaka's like, well, there's more than one answer. This is what I would do, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. Because Manabu asked him, why do you hide your abilities? Kiyotaka obviously wants to live a normal life. And Manabu's like, well, you don't want to leave impression on the school? And he's like, not really. And Manabu's like, well, look at it this way. You don't necessarily have to leave an impression on the school, but leave an impression on the people around you, so the people around you can be like, yo, Anyana Yakoji, right, affected my life in this way. And technically, Kiyotaka has done that with Ari, with Karuzawa, Ichinose, Suzune, Harada, Ruin, a lot of these characters, right? And Manabu's like, make sure that even if you get expelled, or, you know, future down the line, you never see these people again, people will remember who Kiyotaka is. And Kiyotaka himself is like, I never actually thought about this way, right? Creating memories through other people and how much they've impacted me. And like I said, he's already been doing this bit by bit, but, you know, it's pretty interesting that he never thought about this. And, well, I look up to Manabu for saying that, because it gave Kiyotaka a different perspective where he might actually go down that path. He also thanks him for treating his sister and, like, you know, making her grow as a person. And as he's about to leave, Harita shows up with a shocking reveal. And I also want to mention they did shake hands, and this is where Kiyotaka, he's like, man, I wish I got to learn more about the man who was Harita Manabu, right? A senpai giving his junior great advice, and like somebody that he wish he could talk with more, but he knows because of stuff is going on with the White Room, he might not be able to see him again. But Harita comes in, and shockingly she cut off her hair, and the reason why she cut her hair is because originally it was short, but Manabu was like, he likes girls with longer hair, and she did that because her brother said that, meaning his hunch was correct that she was only doing it for his approval. And so now that she cut off her hair, she's finally back to her old self. For Manabu, he's like, he's always loved her, always cared for her, but he just wanted her to be her own person, where Manabu believes that she has the potential to even surpass him. They embrace and he leaves, where he says that he wants to see both of them again, where, you know, as Harita's leaving, you know, she's starting to break down a little bit, and she wants to be left alone, but Kiyotaka doesn't do that, and she cries, right? And she doesn't want Kiyotaka to see her at a low point, but we get to see Harita break down, saying that she's sad because as they finally got to interact with each other, she no longer gets to see her brother. She has to wait 2 years to be able to interact with him even more, which sucks. And you know, the fact that they've developed this much, and I cannot wait to see Manabu come back in the future to see them graduate. Hopefully Kiyotaka will be able to talk with her and talk to him as well. I think that'll be great. Chiaki Matsushita, I'm not gonna hold you, I was not expecting this. Apparently she hides her abilities just like Kiyotaka does, hence why she can kind of figure out that he's holding back, right? She says to herself, she's not a top student, right? She's never going to be a Harita or like a Saki and Naki, but if I had to put her somewhere, she'd probably be like Kushida or Hiyori. She'd definitely be in the top 10, and she thought it was impossible to reach class A, so she was like, I ain't gonna give my full effort, which I can respect, right? If something's impossible, you're not going to drain yourself. But now that she's seeing the class growing, she's like, oh shoot, this might actually be possible. And the reason why she believes that Kiyotaka's holding back is because number one, Karuzawa, because Karuzawa, she broke up with Harada. We know it was a fake relation, but still Harada is considered, I believe, the second best first year student, and Kiyotaka was like 5, and Harada, like, she was like, Karuzawa wouldn't break up with him to downgrade, so that means Kiyotaka possesses, because he's not a bad looking dude, but just like his personality and stuff, because we know that they've gotten a little closer and everybody in the school has known that, but she says that she would not downgrade from Harada to Kiyotaka if he wasn't equal or even better than Harada. He also says the mental arithmetic thing, that, you know, he answered it so quickly that not just like, you're not just smart, like normally smart, or, you know, some dumb luck to be able to figure that out. And also the sports festival, and seeing that, you know, he was able to run against a third year, so, and the fact that he meets with Harita and Harada and other leaders in the class, so she notices that there's something unique about him that he's not telling everybody. And then she meets with Sato and Shinohara at the cafe. They tease Shinohara about her relationship with Ike, and then they end up finding a way to switch the topic about Sato with Anya and Yakoji. And Sato, she talks about how she pays attention to him more than anybody else, because even though he rejected her, he said back then if it was Harita, if it was Kushida, if it was anybody, he wouldn't like go out with him because he doesn't like them like that. And so Shinohara's like, ew, like Kiyotaka's weird, like, you know, for not liking cute girls. And so Sato's like, it's not that, you know, she still likes him even after he did that, but she believes that, you know, there's something special about him, and she believes that Karuzawa has feelings for him, and you know, because of, you know, her breaking up with Harata. And I can't wait for this interaction, right? Her breaking up with Harata, and then Sato was like the one trying to come to her for advice, and so it kind of seems like, you know, she stole his man, right? So I want to see how they're going to interact. And Chiaki Matsushita, she also like agrees, or Chiaki, I forget how it's pronounced, but she agrees that Kiyotaka is a special person, and she agrees with Sato. Then she knows that Kiyotaka's walking, and she's like, oh, I gotta go catch him, because I gotta get this man to unleash his full potential, right? Like my YouTube channel, Potential Unleashed, you guys should definitely subscribe. And as she's watching, trying to follow him, she notices that he's confronted by Tsukishiro, and she doesn't hear the conversation, but we get a little bit of insight about the White Room. Kiyotaka, he's a part of the 4th generation, and he's the only one to complete all the tasks that were asked of him. And that next year that there's going to be a first year from the White Room where Tsukishiro, he places a wager. He's like, if you can figure out who that first year is, then I will I will leave. But if you don't, that first year we'll try to expel you. And then as they leave, he doesn't really care. But Kiyotaki's like, listen here, right? There's 7 billion people in the world. And yes, there probably are some that are better than me. But in the White Room, nobody's better. Kiyotaka, he was talking some ish during this book, man. And he noticed that Chiaki, she was following him the entire time. So he ended up setting a trap for her, and she got startled. She's like, well, I've been caught, right? There's no point in me lying. She's like, yo, I can beat this man psychologically, where she's mistaken, right? Kiyotaka's already beat Kushida, Harikta, Shinose Ruin. He's beating everybody, right? Ain't nobody can beat this man in the psychological warfare type game. But she believes that he's like an ordinary person, and like not an ordinary person, because an ordinary person wouldn't have noticed that she was trailing him. And so she asked him about the mental arithmetic test. How was he able to figure it out? And he's like, oh, well, because only like somebody on the national level could do it. And he was like, well, I did compete on the national level, right? That's how I was able to do it. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell anybody this? And he was like, well, because of my status in the classroom, I don't think anybody would really believe me. And she's like, I guess. But she asked, well, are you holding back? And he's like, yeah, I am. I'm holding back about 70, 80%, where that's not true. I don't know how much he's holding back. I don't know if he's holding back 90. I don't know if he's holding back 40. I don't know what it is, but 70, 80% is definitely not true, right? And, she's trying to convince him to, go all out and so they can reach class. And he's like, I'll do it, fluff it. He's like, next semester, I'm going to try. Like I said, he's mentioned this a couple of times. I don't know how much I believe it, but if he does, try, hey, I'm going to be impressed. But she also asked about the relationship with Karuzawa, and he confirms that he does like her. He did like a little, it was funny. He went up and touched her on the shoulder. He was like, I like you, go out with me. And then she was flustered. She was like, what? And he was like, so like, if I were to do that to you, like, that's how you would react, right? He said, I did that to Karuzawa, right? She didn't answer. So it was pretty funny. We have the final chapter, chapter 7. It's him being nervous about making a confession, because he's about to confess to Karuzawa. He asked her to come to his room. She does. They talk about the rumors between the two. Karuzawa's like, people are saying that, she likes him. People are saying that he likes her, which is true, right? And something that she doesn't like, she's like, all right, we got to get rid of these rumors, because I'm taking off the market, right? If a lot of people know that somebody who is good looking and like has influence, because Kiyotaka, he doesn't think he does, but he does have some influence. She's like, well, if I I'm gonna be taken off the market, nobody's gonna approach me. And he teased her. He's like, oh, well, I went out with HIYORI, and she got mad. He was like, yo, I was just joking, right? I just did it to make you jealous, right? He's like, yo, I gotta really talk to you. And he's like, go out with me. She's like, stop joking, stop playing around. And he's like, well, I'm serious. And she's like, oh, you're serious? She starts getting flustered, and she didn't answer. He's like, oh, well, is it a no? And she's like, no, I'll go out with you, I like you, right? And so they hug, they embrace, and this is where it gets interesting, right? Kiyotaka, he's like, I don't know what face I'm making, right? And when we look at it, he's making a straight face. His heart on the inside, he's saying that he's happy and that, he's smiling on the inside. But something about him, he's fascinated about learning. And because he didn't have familiar love, he didn't have romantic love, this is the first, form of love he's ever had. And so he basically wants to know what's going to happen when he's finished reading this book. Would he discard her? Would her role be over? But at the same time, he's like, will he be somebody who he believes that he cannot leave behind, right? Does he think that he'll end up falling in love with her and want to carry her in the future? He doesn't know what the future has in store. He knows that he'll probably have to go to the White Room, but maybe he won't, right? He wishes that she can be someone, he can be a good guy to her and he can cherish her. So officially, Karuzawa and Yanya Koji are going out. A really solid book. I will say there's going to be a love interest video. I will be reacting. By the time this is up, I think I've already reacted to episode 1 of season 2. And there'll also be me ranking all the first year books. But yeah, so pretty interesting. The next book comes out in 3 weeks from now, so you guys won't wait too long for another review. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your guys' thoughts about this in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also hit the notification bell so you guys never miss out on a new video from me. Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and TikTok is on the screen and in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to unleash your potential.